I really wanted to bring on the number one, the OG, my hero and my everything. So I had to bring the number one guest in the world on. That's my dad.
Wow. I see you the same way.
My dad is one
You're
of
my
the
number
coolest
one.
people you guys would ever meet in your entire life. I tell everybody that. I brag about you.
Oh, you're very kind. I brag about you.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Is this your first podcast?
It's my first podcast. The first time. I plan on doing more, though.
Aww.
I was invited yesterday to be part of a title company podcast that they film every week. I've been in the title business and in the real estate business for about 45 years. And so, so anyway.
And you're good at that. But I think what you're even better at is being a dad.
Oh.
My dad, the reason I brag about him so much is because I learned a lot of really good qualities from my dad. He is always taught me to like love people and like nonstop. I feel like you're just like the most Christ-like person ever. And everyone I talk to believes it. You're non-judgmental. You're sweet. You talk to anyone. Everyone's the same level of worth to you. Doesn't matter who it is.
Thank you.
I remember going through drive-thrus and you would start talking at the window and then you'd have to go inside to finish the conversation.
Oh, yeah. I need to pay you too, right? I owe you money.
And my dad would just walk around with his lawnmower. He's always in your trunk and you mow people's lawn and pull their weeds. Anyone you'd pass by.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. In Huntington Beach, I got this. Somebody bought me a weed eater.
Oh, yeah. And you loved that weed eater.
And I could take it with me. It was a battery powered one. And I'm like, hey, there's a lot of people that need their lawns trimmed, you know. And so I'd jump on my bike and I would go cruise around and just look for people that needed their, that needed their lawns trimmed up a little bit. And that would give me an opportunity to meet them. And
you would always tell us about it and it made you so excited. Like seeing you so excited to help someone when they didn't even ask. Like it taught me to do that to people. And I feel like that's kind of why I'm selfless and always want to help everybody.
Oh, you're very kind.
And I'll put myself I'll put them first, even if it's like something that's hard for me.
Did you learn that from your old man?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know that.
And another thing that I always thought was cool was your parenting style. So like I kind of want to talk about that today, like strict parenting versus chill parenting. I think I got my parenting style from you. I'm definitely the chill parent. And you were too. Like I remember when we were kids, if we ever did something crazy, you would just sit us down and make us read some scriptures. And you say, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, what did you learn from that? I think I was teaching seminary at the time, and I would say, hey, you know what? This goes along with the lesson I taught today in seminary. Hey, you guys, let's, maybe we could do better if we understood what's going on right here. But that's cute. I didn't know that.
And I used to go to seminary with you in the morning.
Yeah.
I would wake up at 4 a.m. to go get donuts and sit in your seminary class because I thought it was cool to be with my dad.
Thank you.
Thought it was cool to sit in your office and go to Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, man, those were old days, right?
Yeah.
That was the good old days. I call it the good old days.
That's cute. Yeah, my dad really is the best. And I learned a lot of good qualities from him. I remember, like, growing up, sometimes because you guys were, like, so nice, I felt a little bit sheltered, though. Like, I didn't know a lot about the opposite. And so in elementary school, I felt sometimes, like, so random because even in my class, when they would tell me, that we only had pizza and Mountain Dew, I thought, like, caffeine and everything was so bad. And I was thinking, like, oh, we were not allowed to have caffeine. My dad tells me it's bad for our bodies.
That's right. I still don't drink caffeine.
He still doesn't.
65 and going,
So my dad still does not drink caffeine. He, like, you won't even take an Advil if you have a headache. Like, I feel like you...
Yeah, I try to avoid all of that stuff. Your body can basically fix itself if you treat it right.
Yeah.
That's my
I think it's cool. And then your favorite foods are so cute because you always like just butter or toast and peanut butter. No, toast and honey or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or cereal.
I love it. I love it. I had peanut butter on sourdough with honey today for lunch.
It's always what you like.
That's right. It's just, just fantastic food.
So I feel like you live like this life where you're just, things don't affect you very much. Why do you think that is?
Or
do they affect you?
Not to get too spiritual, but I feel like the Lord has my back. And I believe that as we're obedient and we strive to treat people correctly in the world, and we try to be like Christ, again, not to get too spiritual, but I feel like if I do those things, that the Lord has my back. And so I don't need to stress over things. I just say, hey, you know what? Help me today. Help me figure out what I need to do. Show me where I need to go. Show me who I need to meet. And it just seems like it all works out. And at the end of the day, it's funny, when I was a young man, I served a mission out in Michigan, and I had learned something from my companion. And this is the joke, okay? Hey, I worry about everything because you know what? 98% of what you worry about doesn't happen, so it must work. So I learned early in my life that worrying about something isn't going to make it any better. So
yeah, it's true.
And my father was a hands-on guy, and his whole thing was, hey, figure it out, make it happen, fix it, do something better. And he used to always tell me, that if you work 8 hours a day, everything's going to work out. Just put your 8 hours in. You can't do 6.5. You can't goof off. 8 straight hours of work every day, things will work out for you and your family. And so I've always kind of had that attitude to say, if I can put some time in, I'll be all right.
Yeah, and I feel like you and Mom were really good at working growing up because your parents gave you that point of view. And sometimes I felt like I don't know, you guys did so much for us that maybe because you probably didn't want us to do what you guys did, where you guys were hard on us. But then I felt like when I turned 18, I didn't know how to have that work ethic.
Oops. My father had us out working at about age 6 or 5 years old. My dad was a carpenter, and on Saturdays and Sundays, it was sort of his days off. And so he would take me to the job site. I would be 5 or 4 or 6 years old. And he'd say, pick up all the bent nails and put them in this box. And all the good nails, put them in this box. Of course, he would take the straight nails and he would use them again, right?
Yeah.
He was a framer. And take all of that wood. Obviously not the big ones because I was just a little guy.
You would help him with carpentry?
Yes, I would. Well, I have an older brother, about 1.5 years older than I. And the two of us, he'd take us to the job site and ask us to clean up. And we would take the wood and stack it, certain size woods. We'd have to pick it up together, right? Benny and I would spend time together picking up like an 8-footer. I couldn't do that myself, basically. And so we would do it together. And gosh, we'd work for 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
Every Saturday, every
I feel like things have
Sunday.
changed over the years. I don't feel like kids are working as young. I did child acting and modeling and stuff like that, but I never saw it as work. It was just so fun for me.
Right. Fun stuff.
How did you feel about that kind of stuff? Did you like that, or did you think it was...
Well, I took you to a lot of auditions. Being self-employed, I call myself that I was available, right?
Yeah.
So I would take you, and it was a joy for me. Absolutely. Aww. We would go, and we would always grab something to eat and an ice cream afterwards. And I don't know, I just enjoyed...
I thought it was cool to be able to spend time with you guys, in the car going to LA, the stuff like that, getting ice cream. I think that's why I loved it so much.
Well, it was good for me too, and I loved it. I miss it.
My dad's also a professional whistler.
I do love the whistle. My father was a whistler.
He was?
So I grew up a whistler, yeah.
So I never really knew my dad's dad, because how old was I when he passed away?
He died 28 years ago, and you're 31. So you would you were 3.
Yeah, I have this one memory of him in the hospital bed, but I think it was from a photo I used to see.
Yeah, he was sick the last year of his life. He was real sick and passed away.
It's crazy how the things that we see photos of, we think we were there. So I wonder if our kids are going to remember their whole childhood because they have videos and photos of every single thing.
I'm sure they will. No
and
doubt.
they'll be I don't know if I remember everything or if it's from all the photos.
Well, it could be a little bit of both, right? Because a picture tells a story, right? There's 1,000 words in the picture.
Yeah.
And so having those pictures for your children, I believe, are going to really be big for them when they get older.
Oh.
It'll be fun for them to share with their children as well.
So one of my favorite things, what's really cool about my dad is he always would share love so much in his parenting. Every night he was very consistent with reading scriptures with us before bed and saying prayers. and all the studying the scriptures all the time, like with us. And I really feel like one of the biggest ways I've become so close to the Savior is from your example.
Thank you.
And
Likewise, I feel the same about you.
oh, I feel like I just can't really ever stray away from it because of who you are. You showed me consistency. Like, you've been the example all along. Like, you didn't just say it and then do something to show otherwise.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I find the greatest joy in serving people. I know this sounds silly, but I know that you all bought me a snowblower for Christmas last year, and of course it snowed like 3 days afterwards, and I was over here snowblowing your guys' house.
You were. He would show up to our driveway and snowplow the whole thing, and then you'd wipe my window in the morning before they had to take the kids to school.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, now I know why they got me this snowblower, because they were expecting me to come with. But no, it got so fun for me because I was able to snowblow the 30 houses around us. I've gotten to know all of those people, and they give me bread, and they come out with hot chocolate, and I just have so much fun serving the people in my neighborhood. I'm the only, there's only 3 of us that have snow blowers, and there's about 30 houses.
Wow.
And most people just blow their own house, and I blow all
You're
the
out
other
there
28.
helping everyone.
Yeah, so
I'm
I do
not
28,
surprised.
and then they do their own.
And it's just like what you genuinely just like love to do.
Oh, I have so much fun.
It's so cute.
Oh, thank you. I love it.
So I like grew up.
Joy.
I grew up like, I feel like so like the kid that you would think like the most Christian, like straight, like following every rule, sticking up for like God in all situations kid in school. Like I was like a missionary all day long too. Like I would tell everybody what they're doing right, how they should be living, like almost too much.
Sometimes it can be.
But then when I got to high school, because I was like so sheltered, I like kind of was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get made fun of if I don't go the other way to try to fit in. And I think because I didn't know, because we never had those chats, because we were just like only chatting about like positive things always. Like I was so curious. And I think that's why I kind of wanted to talk about in this podcast a little bit, how I kind of was like a wayward, a little bit rogue, crazy teenager. And I started getting
a little bit
really influenced by the world and my friends. And I didn't really feel like I could even tell my parents at all because of the way you guys thought. I thought that you guys thought of me like, oh, Maddie Cake's our good girl, you know?
Always.
And I was so scared to bring it up to you. And one time in high school, like I had started like drinking alcohol and doing things like that. And they were not really catching on to it for a while. And then finally, I ended up in the hospital from going too far with it, and I had to get my stomach pumped. And I was all the way far away from our house, 3 hours away.
2.5 hours.
On like a junior trip or something like that. And this is one of my favorite stories because it shows like how parenting with love really changes things. Like I was in the hospital. I would only be on this trip for 2 hours, and I was already in the hospital. It was supposed to be like a 3-day trip. So I only was there for 2 hours, already in the hospital getting my stomach pumped. And I remember the nurse was like, your dad's on your way to get you. And I was so scared about what they were going to say. And right when my dad showed up, he turns on church music in the car. And he just like looks at me and he goes, let's go get some ice cream cakes. And it was like so cool because the way that you reacted wanted me to change like how I was like, I don't want to disappoint my dad. I don't want to disappoint the Lord. I don't want to choose bad decisions because this is what love is. This is what matters.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you would have approached it like, you're grounded for life, give me your phone, you're a terrible kid, like all that stuff, I would have felt so much shame and I would have wanted to not run away, but like escape you and mom more and make worse decisions, I think.
Well, I believe that you're correct. I grew up in a household where my father's 100% Italian. He was disciplined by his father, a barber, who would beat him with his 4-inch wide razor strap that they sharp the razors with. So when he would beat me with his belt, he would say, hey, you're getting it easy. because my dad used to beat me with the 4-inch razor strap, right?
Wow.
So I grew up very, as you know, I stuttered when I was a kid, and I think a lot of that came from the anxiety that I had from my father, because he was very, very physical.
Yeah.
With for some reason, more with me than with any of the other kids. For some reason, I was named after him, so maybe he expected me to be better. But I did have. It was very emotional for me.
Yeah.
So when I was a dad, I remember talking to your mom. Which, by the way, when I look at you, you remind me of your mom because you look just like her when she was your age. And anyway, it was hard for me. I said to Renee, I said, I don't want to beat our kids. You know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lay hands on them that way. I don't mind laying hands on them and give them a father's blessing or something, but I don't want to lay hands on them that way. And so I know it was harder. It was probably harder for you guys to catch on to what's right or what's wrong. But I believe that what you just said, that it was more important for you to teach, for us to teach you through love versus through fear.
Yeah.
And I always used to say to myself, people follow the rules either out of love or out of fear.
Yeah.
And I never wanted you kids to follow
and
rules.
I feel like if you're learning like to follow rules out of fear, it was never genuine. So you're more likely to just go wayward even more in life. Where I feel like I chose to follow, like I really just chose to follow it because I knew that it was the right way because of how you guys showed so much love as parents.
I remember that day, by the way.
Yeah, and like, what were you thinking when you were driving there? Like about your approach and...
So I get this phone call. You're correct. You were there about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And of course, we get this phone call from the mother who was supervising all of you fun kids at spring break, by the way. And it was in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember Renee's all, oh my gosh. Madison's in the hospital. She's got alcohol poisoning. I'm all, what? And so I prayed. I had 2.5 hours, 2 hours to 2.5 hours to pray. Aww. All the way to the hospital. And I kept asking, you know, Heavenly Father, help me figure out what I'm supposed to do. You know, show me what I need to do. And I just remember walking in there, and you were in your bed, of course, in that little cot that they had you on, because there wasn't like a room for you. There was a bunch of people in there, and there you were. And I just remember just wanting to hold your hand and to let you know that I loved you. And I was so sorry that you had this experience, and I hope that you're going to be better, and I know you will. And I remember when they said, hey, it's okay for you to leave. I said, hey, let's go get some ice cream. I thought to myself, you know what? I need to show this girl a lot of love. And so I think back to what my father would have done. Oh, yeah. They would have been a scene. They would have had to call the police inside the hospital. Because he would have went berserk.
He probably wouldn't have picked you up.
Yeah, he would have picked me up.
So what's really sad about my dad is like he went to serve this mission, and he'd go for 2 years away from your family. When he got done, he hadn't seen his family for 2 years, and no one came to see him. No one came to pick him up.
Yeah, I waited for a couple hours, and finally my dad showed up. And, you know, it was unfortunate because my father grew up a little bit different. You know, he grew up with a dad that was very, very boisterous. I grew up in a house where screaming was the everyday way of communicating. And of course, as you know, I didn't get married until I was 31. I met your mother when I was 30, and she was 22. And I just remember how cool she was. She was so chill, and I was kind of chill, and I didn't want to get married and be like my dad, and it was always a fear of mine, like I would be like my dad. By the way, my dad got better.
Okay.
And so just so that set the record straight, he died a very humble, very nice, a very kind man, never raising his voice and always being very, very cool. So he turned into a chill person after he gained the testimony of Christ.
It's probably hard not to have some type of compass to go off of in life. You know, if you don't really know true love or that somebody truly loves you, like Christ or something, I feel like it's hard to show it back.
Yeah.
I think having the knowledge that Christ loves us, like, infinitely helps us want to have like be a good, better parent, better husband, better wife.
Absolutely. Yeah, better dad.
Yeah. So how did it change for you? Because when did you like find the gospel? How old were you?
So I was 14 years old. I was in my 15th year, and I was able to be introduced to the gospel by this 11-year-old girl across the street from us. She came over and she
How
quoted.
cute that she came over to do that.
She was good friends with my 11-year-old sister, and it was a Saturday morning, and she shows up, and
That's so
she snuck
cute.
into our house. She knocked on the door and nobody answered. We were all sleeping. But she heard my mother talking. We have a very, very small house. It was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, 6 kids in it.
Wow.
My dad turned the side porch into a bedroom for my 2 sisters. And then the 4 boys were in 1 bedroom and then my mom and dad in the other. So very small house, about 800 square feet. And she heard my mom on the telephone, which was only 15 feet from the front door. And so she kind of snuck in the house and she went into the kitchen there, and she heard my mother speaking to her mother, my grandmother. I think you've met her.
Yeah.
She died at 106 years old.
That's
Grandma
crazy.
Thielen. And she quoted what's called the 13 Articles of Faith to my mother that day. And my mother was so impressed with the doctrine that was taught in those articles. But she was so impressed with this 11-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, my kids can't quote anything. You know, they can quote the cuss words that their father says to them. But so that's how it started, and I was 15. And when I was able to gain that testimony and join the church, and I can honestly say that it'll be 50 years in February.
Wow.
50 years, and I can just promise you that my life 180-degree turn once I found the gospel, and it changed my whole entire life. And my father joined the church that day as well. And he became a much better person. I mean, he didn't scream at us much anymore after that. Like, he understood that his calling as a father was an eternal calling, not just, batter the kid up, and make them do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Your and mom's conversion story of finding like Christ and everything was like really cool. Sometimes like when you grow up in it, I get jealous of like the people that like can see the contrast, because I mean, obviously it's lucky to grow up in it because you already are kind of in that situation, but it's just really cool. I know like, I think people that grow up in it have to like really find their testimony as they get older on their own. And I think sometimes it's more challenging because the only way to find your testimony is to kind of almost see the opposite side. So I feel like sometimes you almost have to have like a wayward time or something like that to be able to see dark, to be able to see light, to be able to see not love, to be able to see love. And I think that's why sometimes they either go too far and don't come back, or they do it a little bit and then come back stronger. But the conversion stories are always the coolest. I'll have to share my mom sometimes with you guys because that's cool.
She was a beautiful girl. Again, you remind me of her. And when I first met her, I just felt this spiritual feeling like I need to know this girl.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, if I could share with you. So my brother, who's a year and 5 months older than me, he chose not to join the church. And you probably know, that our lives are they just went like this. Mine went down this path of learning to love the world and love every day and love the Lord and love my neighbor and to be a disciple of Christ. Versus he went, I was on the same path as him because, as brothers, come on, dude, you're with me, So I was taught at a very, very young age how to do things wrong.
Yeah.
But to see the difference in our lives, it was just like, I go down this path and his path. It's unfortunate.
It's been unfortunate how it's happened, but I don't know. I think it could also be influences of lots of different things. But yeah, it's just influence of taking one wrong step at a time. I say wrong is like, it's not always wrong, but he ended up, I think, in some hard situations for sure.
Those choices that he makes. Remember, now we all have free agency, right? Agency to choose, but what we do not get to choose are the consequences of our choices.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my brother had chosen, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
many things that had taken him down a path that has really caused his life to be very challenging. He's a great guy, by the way, super loving.
All of my dad's siblings are super cool.
Just a super, super duper guy. Like, I love the heck out of him.
You should share. So my dad actually had like a miracle happen where God like literally healed him when he chose to go teach about Christ. You should share that about your stutter and stuff.
Well, like I said, I grew up with a dad that beat the heck out of me every day. And so I don't know if that had to do with my stuttering, but I stuttered really bad. So much that I really couldn't say hello to you today.
Wow.
And so I just kind of stayed to myself. I didn't say hi to people at school. I just kind of did my own thing. And I was 18 years old. And this, and my young men's president, Lionel Harrison, he said, "Hey, Paul, are you going to go on a mission? Have you thought about that?" And I said, I'm a wreck. I can't even speak. I would be a terrible representative of Christ. And I said, I just don't see myself going on a mission. And about 15 minutes later, he comes back, and I'm in the church building at the time, and I come back. They came and found me. Okay, Paul Hatch, who was kind of like my mentor. He owned a Dale Carnegie school and invited me to come for free many times, and I would come and learn from him how to be positive and how to love people and how to put the life in perspective. And so Lionel and Paul Hatch come looking for me, and they find me, and they say, "Hey, we want to give you a priesthood blessing." And so they put me into a classroom. We went into one of the classrooms there, and they placed their hands on my head and gave me a priesthood blessing. And they promised me that if I would prepare to serve a mission, that the Lord would loosen my tongue. And so that's what I did. I started preparing to serve a mission, and I started speaking better. I remember it was a miracle.
It is a miracle. I feel like it was literally God being like when you hear those stories of where Christ would just like the blind would see, or that's how I felt it was.
Yeah. And it was that way.
Because you have no stutter. And one of your strongest gifts, I feel like, is communication and like the way you talk to people. Like he talks to everybody, like everyone. I'm not kidding. Like that's like your strength. You make everyone feel like they're like somebody who doesn't have anyone talking to them or showing them love for weeks. You make them feel like they're loved. Strangers, anyone who passes by.
Well, I appreciate that. I had a great experience the other day, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I do.
I was in the airport, and our plane was 2 hours late. And of course, I'm looking around, and I'm going, okay, who am I supposed to talk to?
And you're I would never do that. I'm always like, don't talk to me. And if someone talks to me, I'll talk to them, but I'm never looking for it because I get more awkward than you.
So I'm walking around. You know how they have the chairs? Everyone's sitting there, and the airplanes are outside. And everyone's disgusted with the fact that they just posted that our plane's like an hour and 40 minutes late.
Oh, no.
And so I'm walking up and down the aisles, and there's some kids, there's some people, and I'm just having like a prayer in my heart, who am I supposed to talk to? So I sit next to this girl that is about 20 years old, 19 or 20. And I think her name was Macy. And I sit next to her, and she's got headphones on. Or earphones.
People do that on planes too, because you like
earpods,
you don't
right?
want to. Yeah.
So I say, "Hey, how you doing?" And she's like, we talked for the next hour and 40 minutes until the plane came, and we had the greatest experience. She's sort of like an introvert. She rarely talks to people. And I was able to share your story about being an esthetician, because she's an esthetician, and she's trying to grow a following, right? So that she can be in business for herself.
Yeah.
And we talked about, what are you doing for business? How are you marketing yourself? Because that's what I do, right? I'm like a marketer. I'm a business guy. And so I spent an hour and 40 minutes with her, and she was like putting things on her phone, things to do to build her business and how she could do this.
Cute.
And it was so cute. I'll probably never see that girl again, but I do
She'll
that.
always remember that.
I hope so. And I mentioned you and your life to her. And
well, it's really hard if everybody did that, where you look for opportunities anytime you're anywhere as like a moment to like talk to someone, and also surrendering to God in a way, like letting him tell you what they need, because like first you started with the prayer. And I feel like if you do that all the time, then imagine how many people, like we could literally be like his instruments in this world to just like share what he wants to say to people through us.
Yeah.
And we would all be helping each other. We got 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes.
So I think that's what you've always taught me. Sometimes I'm always looking out for, like, I can do better. I think I've gotten a little bit more stressed with having kids, but I think I was really good at saying those little prayers and finding people to help because of that. So I was always trying to find ways to be a good missionary.
Yeah, well, I know that you
you.
are. You're a great disciple of Christ. And he certainly has given you some great gifts to share with the world. And I think that all of us have some good gifts, right?
We
and
do.
if we can share those good gifts with each other, that would be beautiful. It would make the world a better place. And that's what I love about your name, Make a Difference.
Yeah, I got that from you. So you know how at the end of every single one of my vlogs, I say, okay, go make a difference, because it's Madlife, M-A-D, make a difference. So my dad, is it on the bottom of your email or something?
Mm-hmm.
So my dad's end of his email always says, make a difference.
Yeah.
And so I took what he taught me, because he always would say, go make a difference, cakes, like all the time.
Yeah.
He calls me Maddie Cakes.
Maddie Cakes.
And he'd always say that to me. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm starting my own YouTube channel, and I'm going to call it Madlife. And then it's going to kind of be like a make a difference thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I always think of you when I do it, because I don't know, I feel like you just taught me so many good qualities.
Well, that's fun. Thank you.
But yeah, I just feel like you're just so genuine, and I really just look up to you a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I needed you on my podcast.
Oh, geez. I'm so happy that I could be here.
I don't really know what else to talk about.
Well, let's talk about you for a minute.
Okay.
I think about you when you were a young girl. You were very shy as well. You were a lot like me.
Really shy.
Very, very shy.
And you know what came up the other day is I actually had some speech issues too, in a way. Like when I was in kindergarten, I was mute, and in preschool, and I had to be in special ed class because I wasn't able to talk to people. Yeah. And I would be there for the whole year. My teacher's like, she never said one word. And so that's kind of why you guys put me in acting, according to Mom, to bring my shyness up and to get me comfortable with speaking. Yeah. And I think it kind of, that changed my entire life. Like how I've become.
And look at you now.
An actress, a YouTuber, out here speaking to everyone and confident and wanting to entertain. I went from being so shy where I can't even talk to anyone to, in the special needs class, to look what I'm doing. Yep. And it was like a 360. And I had this thought come in my head that God put that stutter, like maybe he put that stutter on you, or he put that muteness on me because he had a plan for us, and to get us into that plan. Yes. Of where we need to be, we need to have a weakness.
Yes. And it makes us humble.
It makes you humble, yeah.
It keeps us humble as well. And it allows us to depend on the Holy Ghost. Remember in John chapter 14, the Lord says, he said, greater things you will do than you saw me do. And you're like, what? How can I never do great things? Because he's going to send the Comforter, even the Holy Ghost. And he will teach you all things. And so the Holy Ghost is what can guide us. And that's what I seek when I'm at the airport like that.
You wait for him to show you. Yeah. And then I think the biggest part is just having faith that he's going to show you. Because I think if you're in your head, like you say a prayer and then you're like, well, I don't know who to talk to. Then you're not really showing that you want him to guide you. Yeah.
So if we're humble enough and we're teachable enough and we will follow his prompting, he will give us it every day, 5 times a day. When I was a sales rep, I would pray every morning, show me the problems, show me where I can help people. And that's how I built my business. It wasn't on trying to be the best salesman or anything like that. I take sales classes. It was show me how I can love and care for others.
Because even our business and our job, like you can't take your money with you when you die. So even all the little things you do in your life should be ultimately for that.
Yeah. And you're a good example of that.
Thanks, Dad. You're a good
You're
example.
welcome.
I'm so glad I have my dad on my podcast today because
thanks for having me.
whenever I talk to you, whenever I'm having a hard time in my life, like it goes through cycles every month or every couple of months, I always have to have my dad come in to reset my brain. Did you know that?
That Palomon brain
It's
of
like
yours.
I can talk to a bunch of people, but until I talk to you, then it resets and I like see this like really bright hope, like that nothing is that hard. Nothing's that bad.
That's right.
And I kind of like, it gives me that push for the next month or two.
And with the Lord, anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
That's right.
So thanks for sharing your light, bright soul with everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys
Thank
for
you for
tuning
having
in. I'm really excited that we had this podcast today, and go make a difference.
Yeah,
right?
Go make a difference.
I feel like I'm stealing your line.
No, I love it.
Go make a difference, and I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Peace.
Peace. Love.
Happiness.